Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku accepted All for One's offer. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The sound of the door closing was not a bang. It was a click. A soft, mechanical finality that severed the world Izuku Midoriya thought he lived in from the gray, concrete reality he was now forced to inhabit. He stood alone on the rooftop. The wind whipped at his school uniform, tearing at the fabric of his gakurin, chilling the sweat that had dried cold against his skin. High above Muzurifu, the city sounded like the hum of a distant machine, sirens, traffic, the murmur of millions of lives moving with purpose. Izuku had no purpose. He stared at the spot where All Might had stood only moments ago. The steam was gone. The skeletal, deflated truth of the symbol of peace had vanished down the stairwell, leaving behind only the echo of words that cut deeper than any villain's blade. I cannot simply say you can become a hero even without power. It's not wrong to dream. But you also have to consider the reality. Izuku's knees gave way. He didn't fall dramatically. He simply sank, the strength evaporating from his legs until he was kneeling on the gravel, clutching his chest. The pain wasn't physical, yet his heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird desperate to escape a cage that had suddenly become too small. He gasped, trying to pull oxygen into lungs that felt compressed by the weight of the sky. He said it, Izuku whispered, his voice cracking. He actually said it. For 10 years, Izuku had built a fortress out of hope. He had stacked brick after brick of analysis, notebooks filled with scribbles, murmurs of strategy, and the blinding smile of a man who saved everyone with a laugh. He had endured Katsuki's explosions, the burns on his shoulders, the laughter of his classmates, and the pitying silence of his mother. He had endured it all because the fortress stood. Someone would believe, but the architect of that hope had just taken a sledgehammer to the foundation. Izuku looked down at his hands. They were scarred from note-taking, callous from lifting weights that were too heavy for his small frame, trembling with the aftershocks of adrenaline. They were empty. If you want to help people, becoming a police officer is also a fine profession. The words tasted like ash. A police officer. A bystander with a badge. Someone who cleaned up the mess after the gods were finished fighting. Izuku crawled to the edge of the roof. He gripped the railing, the metal biting into his palms. He looked down. The cars were toys. The people were ants. Earlier that day, amidst the smell of burnt sugar and nitroglycerin, Katsuki Bakugo had given him advice. If you want to be a hero that badly, there's a quick way to do it. Take a swan dive off the roof and pray for a quirk in your next life. The memory played in high fidelity, Katsuki's sneer vivid in his mind. Izuku leaned forward. Gravity tugged at him, a seductive, heavy hand on the back of his neck. It would be so easy. One step, a few seconds of wind. And then, silence. No more pity. No more I'm sorry, Izuku. No more feeling like a glitch in a world designed for superhumans. He stared into the abyss of the alleyway below. I can't, he sobbed, pulling back, curling into a ball against the fencing. I can't even do that. He was too cowardly to live as a quirkless failure, and too cowardly to die. He was stuck in the purgatory of the useless. He didn't know how long he stayed there. The sun began to dip, painting the sky in bruises of purple and orange. Eventually, the cold drove him to his feet. He picked up his backpack. It felt heavier than usual. He walked to the stairwell door, opened it, and began the long descent. The streets were crowded. It was rush hour, and the sidewalks were a river of bodies. Izuku walked with his head down, navigating the flow by watching the shoes of the people ahead of him. He felt like a ghost haunting the living. Don't look up, he told himself. If you look up, you might see a hero. And if you see a hero, you might scream. He turned a corner, his feet dragging him toward the station, when the sound hit him. It was a low, wet thud, followed by an explosion that rattled the windows of the storefronts next to him. The crowd gasped, collectively stopping. Instinct, honed by years of fanboy obsession, hijacked Izuku's body. His head snapped up. Smoke. Thick, black, oily smoke rising from the shopping district a few blocks away. His legs moved before his brain could stop them. He ran. He dodged businessmen and shoppers, weaving through the gaps, his breath hitching. A villain attack. Who is it? Is it Empty Lady? Kamui Woods? Maybe Death Arms is on the scene. He skidded to a halt at the edge of the police barricade. The crowd was dense here, a wall of onlookers holding up phones, desperate to capture the tragedy for their social media feeds. Izuku pushed through a gap between a tall man and a lamppost, finding a vantage point. His blood froze. The alleyway was an inferno. Flames licked the sides of the buildings, shattering glass and melting asphalt. In the center of the chaos, a massive, shifting mass of sewage-green slime dominated the street, the sludge villain. The one All Might had bottled. I did this, Izuku thought, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. I grabbed All Might's leg. I made him drop the bottle. This is my fault. But the horror was only beginning. The slime wasn't just rampaging, it was feeding. Buried deep within the translucent, foul liquid was a boy. He was struggling, thrashing, explosions popping harmlessly against the fluid body of the monster, ash-blonde hair. Sharp red eyes wide with terror. Kaken. Izuku's mouth opened, a silent scream dying in his throat. Bakugo was suffocating. The villain was forcing itself down his throat, possessing him, using his incredible quirk to wreak havoc. Why aren't they doing anything? Izuku whispered. He looked around frantically. Death Arms was there, holding back the crowd. I can't get close. My punches don't work. Kamui Woods was rescuing civilians from the fire. I have no water. I can't handle the flames. Empty Lady was stuck behind a building, unable to grow to size in the narrow street. They were watching. The professionals. The gods of this society. They were standing there, watching a 14-year-old boy die because the matchup wasn't favorable. Move, Izuku commanded his legs. Move. You have to save him. But his legs didn't move. The paralysis was absolute. Earlier, on the roof, All Might had severed the tendon of Izuku's belief. Without a quirk, you cannot be a hero. That truth was now a chain wrapping around his ankles, rooting him to the pavement. If I go in there, Izuku thought, tears streaming down his face, I will just die too. I can't do anything. I am nothing. He watched Bakugo's eyes meet his across the crowd. For a second, the arrogance was gone. Bakugo looked pleading. He looked like a victim, and Izuku stood still. Pathetic, isn't it? The voice did not come from the person standing next to him. It came from everywhere and nowhere. Izuku flinched, looking around. The crowd was roaring, screaming for a hero, but the voice had been clear, crisp, and calm. Look at them, the voice continued. Waiting for the perfect conditions. Measuring their contracts against the child's life. Izuku stepped back, stumbling away from the barricade. He bumped into a display stand outside an electronics store. The wall of televisions in the window, usually displaying news or commercials, flickered. Static washed over the screens. Then they stabilized. They weren't showing a channel. They were showing him. Izuku froze. On the 20 different screens in the shop window, he saw a live feed of himself, standing there, trembling, snot and tears running down his face. Midoriya Izuku, the voice spoke again. It was coming from a high-end speaker system on display outside the shop. The audio was rich, baritone, and terrifyingly intimate. You want to save him? Izuku stared at the screens. The feed shifted. Now it showed the heroes. Death Arms looking at his watch. Kamui Woods talking on a radio. But you have been told you cannot, the voice purred. You have been told that without power, your will is meaningless. Who? Izuku croaked, his voice barely audible over the chaos of the villain attack. Who are you? A chaotic element has disrupted the order, the voice said, ignoring the question. That slime creature. It is a mistake. A waste. And that boy, he has potential, does he not? Violence, yes, but drive. The screen flickered again. It showed All Might. Not the skeleton, but the hero, standing at the back of the crowd, clutching his side, looking helpless. Even the god of peace is merely watching, the voice whispered. Because he is broken. Just like you. Something in Izuku snapped. I'm not broken. Are you not? The voice was gentle, paternal. You possess the heart of a hero, Izuku. You have the analysis. You have the desire. I have watched you. I have read your notebooks, hero analysis for the future. Brilliant work. You understand quirks better than the pros do. Izuku gripped the strap of his backpack. Stop it. You analyzed Kamui Woods on page 34 of your latest volume. You noted that his lack of fire retardant measures was a fatal flaw. You were right. Look at him. Izuku looked. Kamui Woods was hesitating near the flames. You are right. They are wrong. But they have the power, and you do not. A small drawer on the display stand, usually locked, clicked open. Inside sat a simple, black wireless earpiece. Put it on, Izuku, the voice commanded. Let us speak properly. Izuku looked at the earpiece. He looked at the dying Bakugo. He looked at All Might, who was coughing blood into his hand, hidden by the crowd. I have no choice. Izuku grabbed the earpiece and jammed it into his ear. The sounds of the crowd vanished instantly. The earpiece must have had active noise cancelling, because suddenly, there was only silence, and the voice. Good, the man said. Now, walk into the alleyway to your left. The narrow one between the bakery and the bank. Do it now, or Katsuki Bakugo dies. Izuku moved. He felt like a puppet, strings pulled by desperation. He slipped away from the crowd, ducking into the shadows of the alley. It was a dead end, filled with trash bins and shadows. I'm here, Izuku whispered. Can you help him? Are you a pro? A pro? The man laughed softly. It was a dry, rasping sound. No. Pros are bound by laws that let children suffocate. I am a concerned party. I can give you the means to save him, Izuku, but you must be willing to accept the reality of it. I'll do anything, Izuku said, the image of Bakugo's terrified eyes burning in his mind. Please, the reality, the voice continued, is that all men are not created equal. You learned that at age 4. But equality can be granted. Order can be restored. The air in the alleyway grew heavy. The shadows seemed to lengthen, twisting and writhing. A black mist began to swirl in the center of the dead end. It wasn't smoke, it was a void. Step through, the voice said. It will only take a moment. Time flows differently where we are going. If I leave, Kaken will. I can pause his death, but I cannot prevent it without an agent. You are that agent. Step through, Izuku. Izuku looked back at the sliver of street visible from the alley. He could see the orange glow of the fires. He took a breath, closed his eyes, and stepped into the black mist. The sensation was like being pulled through a straw. Cold, viscous darkness pressed against his skin, and then, instantly, he was standing on a tile floor. The room was dim, illuminated by the glow of medical monitors and tubes filled with bubbling liquids. It smelled of antiseptic and ozone. At the far end of the room sat a man in a chair, hooked up to a complex life support system. His face was a ruin of scar tissue, completely eyeless, hooked to tubes that hissed rhythmically. Izuku gasped, backing away. Where? Do not be alarmed, the man in the chair said. His voice was the one from the earpiece. My body was destroyed by the same hypocrisy that broke your heart today. The man, all for one, raised a hand. It was large, pale, and trembling slightly. We have very little time, Midoriya Izuku. The sludge villain is suffocating your friend. His lung capacity is failing. You have approximately 90 seconds before irreversible brain damage occurs. Then send a hero. Izuku screamed. Why did you bring me here? Because there are no heroes capable of this. All for One's voice boomed, startlingly loud. Only you have the drive to move when others wait. But you lack the tool. The blind man pointed a finger at Izuku. I can give you a quirk. Right now. Izuku stopped breathing. The world spun. What? I have the ability to transfer power. I have stockpiled many abilities. I have seen your potential. You are a vessel waiting to be filled. You want to save him? Take the power. That's impossible, Izuku stammered. Quirks are genetic. You can't just. Is it any more impossible than a man changing the weather with a punch? Or a woman turning into a giant? All for One leaned forward, the tubes shifting. Do not question the how. Question the why. Why are you powerless? Because fate rolled the dice and you lost. I am offering to load the dice. On a nearby monitor, a live feed of the attack played. Bakugo's explosions were getting weaker. His eyes were rolling back. Choose Izuku. All for One commanded. Return to the alley as you are, and watch him die. Or accept my gift, and become the savior. Izuku looked at the screen. He looked at his hands, useless, empty hands. He thought of All Might on the roof. I cannot simply say you can become a hero. All Might was wrong. This man was saying he could. Give it to me, Izuku whispered. Louder. Give it to me. Izuku screamed, tears flying. I want to save him. Good. All for One's hand extended. His fingers elongated, shooting across the room like black tendrils, piercing into Izuku's chest. It wasn't a gentle transfer. It was agony. Izuku arched his back, a silent scream tearing his throat apart. It felt like molten lead was being poured directly into his veins. His nervous system lit up with white-hot fire. He felt his DNA unspooling and knitting back together, forced into a new configuration by sheer, overwhelming will. Power. It flooded him. It wasn't the physical strength of All Might. It was something mental. Something sharp. He felt his mind expand, his senses sharpening until he could hear the hum of the electricity in the walls, feel the air currents in the room. Telekinesis, All for One said, his voice echoing in Izuku's rattling skull. A simple, yet profound ability. I have augmented it with a stockpile of kinetic force. It responds to will. If you want something to move, it will move. If you want something to break, it will break. The tendrils retracted. Izuku fell to his knees, panting, sweat soaking his uniform. He looked at his hand. The air around his fingers warped, shimmering like heat haze. Go, All for One said. The portal is open. Save him. Show them the error of their ways. The black mist swallowed Izuku again. He stumbled out of the alleyway and back into the roaring noise of the city. 90 seconds. He had been gone for less than a minute, yet he felt like he had aged a decade. The situation had worsened. The fires had joined, creating a wall of heat that pushed the heroes even further back. The sludge villain had fully covered Bakugo's mouth. The explosions had stopped. Izuku walked toward the barricade. Hey! Kid! Get back! Death Arms shouted, waving a massive hand. It's too dangerous. Izuku didn't hear him. The noise canceling in his brain, a side effect of the quirk, filtered out the useless data. He focused on the target. Target, fluid body. High viscosity. Weakness, solid eyes and mouth. Victim located in central mass. Izuku stepped past the police tape. Kid! Kamui Woods reached out with a wooden branch to grab him. Izuku didn't look. He simply flicked his left hand. A wave of invisible force slammed into Kamui Woods, knocking the pro-hero backward into Death Arms. The crowd gasped. Izuku kept walking. He could feel it. The hum of power under his skin. It was intoxicating. It was terrifying. It was necessary. He stopped 10 meters from the villain. The heat was intense, singing the hair on his arms, but he pushed the heat away with a thought, creating a bubble of cool air around himself. The sludge villain noticed him. Two bulbous, manic eyes swiveled toward Izuku. You again? The villain gurgled. The quirkless brat? You want to die that badly? The villain launched a tendril of slime at Izuku, moving faster than a whip. Too slow. Izuku raised his right hand. He didn't punch. He didn't yell smash. He simply opened his palm and clenched his fingers, as if crushing a grape. Halt! The slime tendril stopped in midair, inches from Izuku's face. It vibrated, straining against an invisible wall. The villain's eyes widened. What? Let him go, Izuku said. His voice was flat, devoid of the stuttering fear that had defined his life. I'll kill you! The villain roared, trying to expand, to engulf Izuku. Izuku narrowed his eyes. He could feel the fluid dynamics of the villain. He could feel the separation between the villain's sludge and Bakugo's solid body. Separate. Izuku thrust both hands forward and ripped them apart. The air shrieked. A concussive blast of telekinetic pressure slammed into the villain. It wasn't a blunt impact. It was a dissection. The slime was torn away from Bakugo's body violently, splattering against the burning buildings with the force of gunshot rounds. Bakugo fell forward, coughing and gasping, hitting the pavement hard. The sludge villain shrieked, trying to reform, but Izuku didn't let him. He twisted his wrist. The scattered puddles of slime were pinned to the asphalt. The villain's eyes, floating in a small puddle of goo, looked up in sheer terror. "Stay," Izuku commanded. He pushed his hand down, and the pressure increased. The pavement cracked under the villain's liquid form. The villain gurgled, flattened into a helpless stain. Silence. Absolute, heavy silence descended on the street. The fires roared, but the people were mute. The pro-heroes stared, mouths agape. Izuku walked over to Bakugo. The blond boy was on his hands and knees, retching, his uniform covered in slime. He looked up, his red eyes watery and bloodshot. He saw Izuku. Deku? Bakugo rasped. What the hell? Izuku looked down at his tormentor. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel fear looking at Katsuki Bakugo. He felt pity. You looked like you needed help, Izuku said quietly. Young man! The voice broke the spell. Izuku flinched. He turned to see All Might breaking through the crowd. The hero had buffed up, forcing his muscle form despite the steam rising from his body. He looked horrified. Young man, step away from the villain! All Might shouted, his smile straining. Izuku looked at All Might. He looked at the pro-heroes who were finally rushing in now that the danger was neutralized. Now you move, Izuku thought bitterly. Now that I did your job. The earpiece in his pocket, he had taken it out, but he could still hear the phantom voice, seemed to hum. They are hypocrites, Izuku. Do not let them take credit for your victory. Izuku backed away. I have to go. Wait. All Might reached out. Your quirk. I didn't know you had. Izuku didn't answer. He turned and ran. Stop him! Death Arms yelled. That was illegal quirk usage. He's a vigilante. The crowd, confused and frightened by the sheer brutality of Izuku's display, parted like the Red Sea. Izuku sprinted. He used his new power to shove the air behind him, propelling himself forward with supernatural speed. He turned the corner, leaped over a fence, soaring 20 feet into the air, and landed in the labyrinth of back alleys. He ran until his lungs burned. He ran until the sirens were a distant wail. He collapsed under a bridge near the riverbank as night fully set in. The adrenaline crash was brutal. His hands shook violently. He dry-heaved into the grass, his body rejecting the sheer volume of stress he had endured. I did it, he gasped, wiping his mouth. I saved him. He waited for the feeling of triumph. He waited for the feeling of heroism. It didn't come. Instead, he felt cold. He felt the phantom sensation of those black tendrils digging into his chest. He felt the terrifying ease with which he had nearly crushed the sludge villain. He reached into his pocket. He hadn't realized he'd kept the earpiece, but there it was. Next to it was a small, sleek business card. He must have picked it up in the warp room, or maybe AFO had slipped it into his pocket. It was black with white text. Dr. Kudaigaraki. Life Force Clinic. For those who seek to heal the world. The earpiece buzzed. Izuku put it in his ear, trembling. Excellent work, Izuku, All for One's voice said. You saved the boy. You did what the symbol of peace could not. Izuku stared at his hand. He clenched it, and a soda can lying 5 feet away crushed flat. I used a quirk without a license. I attacked a hero. You saved a life, the voice corrected. Laws are written by those in power to maintain their power. Today, you rewrote the law. What do you want from me? Izuku asked. I owe you. I know I owe you. You owe me nothing but your potential, All for One said smoothly. Come to the address on the card tomorrow. We have much to discuss. The world is sick, Izuku. It is filled with false heroes and chaotic villains. It needs a cure. A cure? It needs order. It needs a ruler who understands the value of power because he was born without it. It needs you. The connection clicked off. Izuku sat under the bridge, listening to the river flow. He thought about All Might on the roof. I cannot simply say you can become a hero. He thought about the power humming in his veins. The power that had saved Kaken. Izuku stood up. The fear was still there, but it was being suffocated by a new, colder resolve. He crushed the soda can into a dense ball of metal with a thought, then dropped it. "I'm not a hero," Izuku whispered to the darkness. He began to walk home, the card burning a hole in his pocket. "I'm going to be something better." The morning sun that filtered through the curtains of the Midoriya apartment was offensive. It was too bright, too cheerful, too normal. It illuminated the dust motes dancing in the air and the All Might posters plastered on the walls, smiling, garish, and suddenly mocking. Izuku Midoriya lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling. He hadn't slept. How could he? Every time he closed his eyes, he felt the phantom sensation of the sludge villain dispersing under his will. He felt the terrifying, godlike grip of the telekinesis crushing a living thing into the pavement. It was a sensation of absolute control that made his skin crawl and his heart race with a dark, addictive thrill. He sat up, his hands trembling. He looked at his palms. They looked the same as they had yesterday, scarred from note-taking, callous from lifting weights. But underneath the skin, something foreign hummed. It was like a second nervous system, a dormant current waiting for a command. "Izuku?" The voice came from the other side of the door. Gentle. Worried. "I'm awake, Mom," he called out. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. Older. "Hello. Breakfast is ready, honey. You were out late last night." "I was worried. I just went for a long walk. To clear my head." It wasn't a lie, technically. He had walked. He had walked away from the scene of a crime he committed to save a life. He had walked away from the symbol of peace. Izuku dressed mechanically. He avoided looking at the All Might action figure on his desk. He slipped his hand into his pocket and touched the cold, sharp edge of the business card. Dr. Kudaigaraki. Life Force Clinic. He ate breakfast in silence. The television was on, blaring the morning news. Witnesses report a mysterious force crushing the villain instantly. Pro-heroes on the scene were baffled. Police are searching for a young male, possibly a vigilante with a high-level telekinetic quirk. Inko Midoriya fretted over her tea. "It's getting so dangerous lately, Izuku. Vigilantes running around, that poor boy who was attacked. I hope he's okay." Izuku chewed his toast slowly. "He's fine, Mom. The heroes saved him." "Oh, thank goodness. All Might was there, wasn't he? He always makes things right." Izuku stopped chewing. He looked at his mother, a woman who had apologized to him for 10 years for giving him a broken body. A woman who loved him but didn't believe in him. All Might was there, Izuku thought, a cold bitterness rising in his throat. He was watching. He was waiting for the perfect moment, while Kaken suffocated. "Yeah," Izuku said, swallowing the dry bread. All Might was there. He stood up, grabbing his backpack. "I'm going out, Mom. I might be late." "Again? Do you have cram school?" "Something like that," Izuku said. "I'm looking into a new study program. For the future." He walked out the door before she could ask any more questions. The future she envisioned for him was a desk job, safe and invisible. The future he was walking toward was written in black ink on a card that felt heavy as lead in his pocket. The address led him to the Jaku General Hospital District, but not to the main entrance. The Life Force Clinic was a separate annex, a sleek, modernist building tucked away in a quiet cul-de-sac. It didn't look like a villain's lair. It looked expensive. The windows were tinted dark, and the sign out front was modest, etched in brushed steel. Izuku stood on the sidewalk, his heart hammering against his ribs. This was madness. He was walking into the lion's den. The man on the rooftop, the man with the scarred face, was clearly not a legal entity. He had given Izuku a quirk. That was impossible. That was a violation of every law of biology Izuku had ever studied. And yet the power was there. Thrumming. Waiting. If I go in, there's no turning back, Izuku realized. If I turn around now, I can go to the police. I can tell them everything. And then what? They would arrest him for illegal quirk usage. They would take the power away. They would look at him with that same pitying stare. Poor quirkless boy, making up stories, or worse, they would believe him, and he would be a lab rat for the rest of his life, and society would continue as it was. Heroes watching children die because the paperwork wasn't right. Izuku pushed the glass door open. The reception area was sterile, smelling of lemon antiseptic and ozone. There was no receptionist. Just a camera that swiveled to track him as he entered. Midoriya Izuku, a synthesized voice spoke from the walls. Please proceed to elevator B, basement level 2. Izuku swallowed hard and obeyed. The elevator ride was smooth and silent. When the doors opened, he wasn't in a basement. He was in a laboratory that rivaled the ones he'd seen in documentaries about Island. Walls lined with servers blinked rhythmically. Tanks of glowing green fluid lined the far wall, though the glass was frosted, obscuring what floated inside. In the center of the room, sitting on a rolling stool and adjusting a microscope, was a small, round man with bushy gray mustaches and strange goggles. He spun around as Izuku stepped out. Ah! The patient zero of the new era. The doctor cackled, hopping off his stool. He moved with a spry energy that belied his age. Welcome, welcome. I am Dr. Garaki. But you may call me the doctor. Everyone does. Izuku clutched his backpack straps. You work for him? The man with the scars? Work for him? We are partners in the great pursuit of knowledge. Garaki waddled over, circling Izuku like a shark inspecting a seal. He prodded Izuku's arm. Amazing. Truly amazing. No rejection science, no necrosis. Your body accepted the kinetic booster quirk as if it were born with it. Kinetic booster? Izuku asked. I thought it was telekinesis. A semantic difference. Garaki waved a hand dismissively. It creates a field of kinetic energy manipulatable by thought. But that's not the point. The point is you, my boy. Garaki grabbed Izuku's wrist and pulled him toward an examination chair. Sit. Sit. We must collect data. It is rare we find a vessel so empty. Izuku sat, feeling small. Empty? Quirkless, Garaki corrected, though the words sounded less like an insult and more like a scientific classification. He began attaching sensors to Izuku's temples. Most people these days are like full cups. Their DNA is packed tight with their own quirk factors. If you try to pour more wine into a full cup, it spills. It breaks. It turns into a mindless Nomu. Izuku froze. Nomu? Garaki paused, realizing he'd slipped. He cleared his throat. A term for failed experiments. But you were an empty cup, Midoriya-kun. A genetic throwback. A blank canvas. You didn't just hold the power, you integrated it instantly. It's beautiful. So, being quirkless was a good thing? Izuku asked, his voice trembling. In the old world? No. In the new world we are building? It is the greatest gift you could have, Garaki said, typing furiously on a holographic keyboard. You are the ultimate adapter. A screen on the wall flickered to life. It wasn't showing medical data. It was showing a waveform, an audio visualizer. Doctor, the deep, baritone voice of All for One filled the lab. Izuku straightened his spine. Welcome, Izuku, the voice said. It sounded warmer than before, almost paternal. I trust the doctor is treating you well? He can be a bit enthusiastic. He's fine, Izuku said. Why am I here? You said we had to discuss the cure. Direct. I like that. On the screen, a digital file opened. Izuku gasped. It was a scan of a notebook page. Hero Analysis for the Future, Volume 13. The page detailed Empty Lady's debut. Where did you get that? Izuku asked. Kaken, he burned it. We have eyes everywhere, All for One replied. And unlike your friend, I found this analysis fascinating. You noted that Empty Lady's growth caused structural damage to the road, delaying the ambulance for a cardiac patient by 4 minutes. You estimated a 15% decrease in overall safety when she operates in urban centers. Izuku looked down. It was just muttering. It doesn't mean anything. It means everything. All for One's voice rose. You see the cracks in the system, Izuku. You see the collateral damage that society ignores because they are blinded by the celebrity of heroes. They treat quirks like toys, like marketing tools. But quirks are weapons. The screen changed. It showed a graph. A jagged red line spiking upward. Do you know the quirk singularity theory? Garaki asked, stepping in. Yes, Izuku said automatically. Dr. Garaki's theory? Wait, your theory? It says that as quirks mix and evolve, they will become too powerful for the human body to control, eventually leading to societal collapse. Precisely. Garaki beamed. And they called me mad. They exiled me. But look around you, boy. Children are born with the power to level cities. The sludge villain? He was a petty thief, yet it took the number one hero to stop him, and even he is faltering. The world is approaching a breaking point, All for One continued. Chaos is rising. If left unchecked, these heroes will not be enough. They are reactive. They wait for the villain to strike. They wait for the building to fall. And you? Izuku asked. What are you? I am the preventative measure, All for One said softly. I bring order. I take power from those who abuse it, and I give it to those who need it. I manage the garden, Izuku. I prune the weeds so the flowers can grow. You steal quirks. Is it theft to take a gun from a murderer? All for One countered. Is it theft to take a match from an arsonist? That sludge villain, he will never hurt anyone again, because I will ensure he has no power to do so. Is that not justice? Izuku opened his mouth to argue, but the words died. He thought of the villain's terrified face as he was crushed. He thought of the peace that followed, but the heroes are performers, All for One spat. All Might is the greatest performer of them all. He smiles to hide the fact that he is drowning. He told you that you couldn't be a hero, didn't he? He looked at your potential and saw nothing. Why? Izuku gripped his knees. Because I was weak. No. Because you didn't fit his script, All for One said. You were inconvenient. But to me, Izuku, you are essential. The validation hit Izuku like a physical drug. For his entire life, he had been apologizing for existing. Now, the most powerful man on earth was telling him he was essential. I want to fix it, Izuku whispered. I want a world where people don't have to be afraid. Where kids don't get bullied for being different. Where people like Kaken don't have to be victims. Then you must become the architect of that world, All for One said. But to do that, you need more than just one quirk. You need a mind that can process the chaos. You need a body that can endure the burden. Garaki stepped forward, his goggles glinting. The kinetic booster is just a loaner, my boy. A test drive. If you truly want to save them, you need the upgrade. Upgrade? Surgery, Garaki said, gesturing to the operating table in the corner. We need to reinforce your skeletal structure. We need to enhance your neural pathways to handle increased cognitive load. I have a quirk in storage, hyperspecs. It increases processing speed and memory retention. It turns your brain into a supercomputer. Combined with your natural analytical skills, you would see the world in slow motion. You would see the solution to every problem before it happens. Izuku looked at the table. It looked cold. It looked like a slab in a morgue. And if I refuse? Then you walk out that door, All for One said. I will take back the kinetic booster. You will go back to being Deku, the useless boy who watches from the sidelines. And when the next villain attacks, you will simply watch. The silence in the lab was deafening. Izuku closed his eyes. He saw the rooftop. He saw the back of All Might's head as he walked away. He saw the pity in his mother's eyes. I can't go back. He opened his eyes. They were hard. The green irises seemed to darken. Do it, Izuku said. The procedure was not like surgery. It was like an exorcism of his humanity. There was no anesthesia that could fully dull the sensation of his biology being rewritten. Izuku lay on the table, strapped down, while Garaki worked with terrifying efficiency. Tubes were inserted into his veins, pumping a glowing, viscous blue liquid into his system. It burned like acid. This is a regenerative serum, Garaki explained casually, his voice muffled by a surgical mask. To help your body accept the structural changes. It will hurt, but you will heal faster than we can cut. Izuku screamed into the bite guard they had given him. He felt his bones knitting, thickening. He felt his muscles tearing and rebuilding, denser, tighter. But the worst was the head. When Garaki initiated the transfer of the hyperspecs quirk, it felt like a lightning bolt had been driven through Izuku's eye socket. His mind shattered. For a moment, he wasn't in the lab. He was floating in a void. Darkness surrounded him. But it wasn't empty. There were presences. Shadowy figures stood in the distance, their backs turned to him. 1, 2, 3, 7 of them. They felt warm, familiar yet distant. They seemed to be weeping. Then, a massive, looming shadow eclipsed them. A figure in a suit, faceless, with a hand extended. "Welcome home, little brother," a voice echoed, though it wasn't all for one's voice. It was older. Ancient. Izuku reached out to the shadows. "Help me!" The shadows didn't move. They couldn't. They were trapped in the gravity of the dark sun that was All for One. "You are not one of them." All for One's voice thundered in the void. "You are mine! You are the vessel of order!" The darkness rushed into him, filling his mouth, his nose, his ears. It suffocated him, not with sludge, but with power. Pure, raw, unfiltered authority. Izuku woke up screaming, vital signs stabilizing. Garaki's voice cut through the haze. Heart rate returning to normal. Cognitive functions coming online. Izuku gasped, sitting up. He ripped the sensors off his chest. He was soaked in sweat, and his body felt heavy. But not heavy like a burden. Heavy like a tank. He looked around the room. The world had changed. He didn't just see the lab. He saw everything. He looked at the server bank. He didn't just see lights blinking. He saw the pattern. Binary sequence. Refresh rate 60 Hz. Data packet transmission intervals suggest encryption level AES 256. He looked at Garaki. Heart rate elevated, 110 BPM. Pupil dilation, 4 mm. Microtremor in left hand suggests early-stage Parkinson's or excessive caffeine intake. Sweat on brow indicates excitement. He looked at the tank of green fluid. Viscosity similar to glycerin. Object inside, biological mass. Humanoid. Brain exposed. Multiple quirk signatures detected within the biomass. Izuku grabbed his head. Too much. It's too much. Breathe, All for One's voice soothed from the speakers. Focus. The hyperspecs quirk is active. It is flooding your sensory input. You must learn to filter it. Treat your mind like a browser. Close the tabs you do not need. Izuku squeezed his eyes shut. Focus. He pushed the data away. The binary codes, the biological readings, the structural integrity of the floor tiles. He shoved them into the background. He opened his eyes. The world was sharp, clearer than high definition, but manageable. "How do you feel?" Garaki asked, holding up a penlight. "I feel." Izuku clenched his fist. He could feel every individual muscle fiber contracting. "I feel capable." "Excellent," Garaki grinned. "The surgery was a complete success. Your bone density has increased by 40%. You have a low-level regeneration factor now, passive healing. It won't regrow a limb in battle, but you'll recover from a beating in hours instead of weeks. And the hyperspecs, well, you see the results. And the telekinesis?" Izuku asked. "Still there. Anchored deeper now. Your mind is better equipped to calculate the vectors needed to use it effectively." Izuku swung his legs off the table. He landed on the floor. He felt solid. "Now," All for One said. "The test." The far wall of the lab slid open, revealing a reinforced concrete chamber. Inside stood a robot, one of the models used for Quirk's testing, likely stolen or black-marketed. It was armed with a rubber bullet Gatling gun. "Defeat it," All for One commanded. Izuku walked into the chamber. The door hissed shut behind him. The robot's sensors turned red. Target acquired. The Gatling gun spun up. In the past, Izuku would have panicked. He would have flinched. He would have started muttering, trying to formulate a plan while freezing in fear. Now, time seemed to slow. Calculation. Gun spin-up time, 1.2 seconds. Muzzle velocity, 800 meters per second. Trajectory, sweeping arc from left to right. Solution, neutralize weapon mechanism. Izuku didn't run. He stood his ground. As the first bullet fired, Izuku raised his hand. He didn't stop the bullet. That was inefficient. It required too much force to stop kinetic energy head-on. Instead, he visualized the barrel of the gun. He visualized the delicate internal mechanism that fed the ammo belt. Twist. With a thought, he applied torque to the internal feed ramp. Crunch! The sound of metal shearing was loud in the enclosed space. The gun jammed instantly. The barrels ground to a halt, smoking. The robot, following its programming, attempted to charge him for a melee attack. Calculation: robot mass, 400 kilograms. Velocity, 15 meters per second. Momentum, high. Center of gravity, high. Solution: remove friction. Izuku looked at the floor beneath the robot's feet. He visualized the surface becoming frictionless, lifting the microscopic imperfections of the concrete. The robot's feet slipped. It crashed face first into the ground with a resounding boom. Izuku walked over to the prone machine. It was trying to push itself up. End simulation, Izuku said calmly. He reached out his hand. He focused on the robot's power core, buried beneath the chest plate. Crush! He clenched his fist. The chest plate caved in as if stepped on by a giant. The robot powered down instantly, sparks showering the floor. Total elapsed time, 6 seconds. Garaki was clapping when the door opened. Magnificent! Efficiency! Economy of motion! No wasted energy. Yelling smash! Izuku looked at his hands. They weren't shaking anymore. I didn't even sweat, he whispered. That is the power of order, All for One said. Now, Izuku. We must discuss your mission. Izuku looked up at the camera. Mission? You possess the power to change society. But you cannot do it from the shadows alone. You need a platform. You need credibility. A file appeared on the main screen. It was the logo of a school. The Golden UA. You want me to go to UA? Izuku asked, surprised. But I'm a vigilante. I'm working for you, precisely. You will be the spy in the House of Heroes, All for One explained. But not a saboteur. I do not want you to blow up the school, Izuku. That is Tamura's style, crude, childish destruction. Tamura? My other student. You will meet him eventually. He represents the anger of the outcast. You, Izuku, represent the intellect. I want you to infiltrate UA. I want you to become the top student. I want you to show them that their definition of heroism is flawed from the inside. You want me to become a hero? I want you to become a symbol, All for One corrected. A symbol that overshadows all might. And when the time is right, when society sees that you, the logical, efficient, perfect hero, reject the old ways, the system will crumble on its own. But the entrance exam, Izuku said, his mind already racing with logistics. My quirk registration. It says quirkless. A clerical error. Garaki waved a hand. I have already hacked the registry database. Your file now lists you as a late bloomer. Quirk, psionic augmentation. It covers the intelligence boost and the telekinesis vaguely enough to pass inspection. It happens rarely. That trauma triggers a dormant quirk factor. The trauma of the sludge incident, Izuku realized. It's a perfect cover. Exactly. You will take the exam. You will dominate. And you will begin your work. Izuku stared at the UA logo. For years, that logo had been his dream. It had represented salvation. Now, it looked like a target. I'll do it, Izuku said. One last thing, All for One said. You need a name. Not a hero name, not yet. But a name for yourself. A reminder of what you are leaving behind. Izuku thought for a moment. He thought of Bakugo's sneering face. Deku. Wooden puppet. Useless. He thought of the kanji. Deku. Deku, Izuku said. Garaki blinked. You want to keep that insult? It's not an insult anymore, Izuku said coldly. He tapped his temple. In computer programming, DL is the command to delete. To remove. To clear. He looked at the camera, his eyes glowing faintly green. I'm going to delete the old world. I'm going to clear the slate. I am Deku. Poetic, All for One chuckled. Go home, Deku. Rest. Your training begins tomorrow. The walk home was surreal. Izuku felt like a stranger in his own neighborhood. The colors of the world were too bright, the sounds too distinct. He could hear a couple arguing 3 blocks away. He could smell the ozone of a passing train. He passed a convenience store. A crowd was gathered out front. It's native! Someone squealed. The pro-hero native. Izuku stopped. He looked over the heads of the crowd. The hero, native, was standing there, posing for photos. He was wearing his tribal-themed costume. He was smiling, signing a notebook for a teenager. Observation: native. Patrol zone: Hosu. Current location: Mizudafu. Why is he here? Analysis: publicity tour. Merchandise launch in the store behind him. Threat assessment 0. Izuku watched as a delivery truck honked, stuck behind the crowd spilling into the street. Native ignored the traffic jam he was causing. He ignored the potential safety hazard. He was too busy being a celebrity. Inefficient, Izuku thought. Self-serving. He creates disorder for the sake of ego. In the past, Izuku would have pushed to the front, begging for an autograph. He would have analyzed Native's quirk with starry eyes. Now, he just felt disgust. You are a weed, Izuku thought, staring at the hero. And one day, I will pull you out. He turned and walked away, his backpack feeling light, his mind racing with plans. When he got home, the apartment was quiet. His mother was asleep on the couch, the TV still on. Izuku walked to his room. He sat at his desk. He opened the bottom drawer, where he kept his stash of notebooks. He pulled out a fresh one. It still had the wrapper on it. He tore the plastic off. He grabbed a black marker. He didn't write Hero Analysis for the Future Volume 14. Instead, he wrote in sharp, angular kanji, Hero Society, Flaws and Corrections, Volume 1. He opened the first page. He wrote, Entry 1, All Might. Weakness, Sentimental. Bound by image. Injury hidden on left side confirmed by rooftop interaction. Correction protocol, expose the frailty. Dismantle the symbol. Izuku stared at the words. A small part of him, the boy who cried watching All Might's debut video, screamed in horror. But that voice was quiet now, drowned out by the hum of the Hyperspecs quirk, analyzing the optimal way to destroy a god. He put the pen down. He looked at his hand, flexing the fingers. I'm sorry, All Might, he whispered to the empty room. But you were right. I couldn't be a hero without a quirk. A dark smile, one he had learned from a faceless man, touched his lips. So I became a villain to save them. The gates of UA High School were less a barrier and more a monument to vanity. They were massive, glittering barriers of steel and glass, designed to intimidate villains and inspire the masses. To Izuku Midoriya, standing before them in his crisply pressed middle school uniform, they looked like the bars of a golden cage. He adjusted the strap of his yellow backpack. His heart rate was steady, unnaturally so. 62 beats per minute. Cortisol levels, low. Adrenaline, negligible. The Hyperspecs quirk hummed in the back of his mind, a constant, low-level stream of data overlaying his vision. He saw the structural stress points on the gate hinges. He saw the security cameras swiveling in their housings, calculating their blind spots in real time. He saw the nervous sweat on the necks of the other examinees. He wasn't nervous. Why would he be? He had the answers to the test before it even began, not because he cheated, though Garaki had offered, but because he had spent the last 10 months dismantling the very concept of heroism in Dr. Garaki's lab. Out of my way, Deku! The voice was a growl, familiar and rough. Katsuki Bakugo shouldered past him, his ash-blonde hair spiking aggressively. He didn't look at Izuku. He looked through him, expecting the usual flinch, the usual stuttering apology. Izuku didn't flinch. He didn't apologize. He simply calculated the vector of Bakugo's shove, shifted his weight by 3 inches, and allowed Bakugo to stumble slightly as his shoulder met empty air. Bakugo stopped, turning around with a snarl. Ha! You got a balance problem or something? Izuku looked at him. Really looked at him. The hyperspecs highlighted the micro-tremors in Bakugo's hands, nerves masked by aggression. Good luck, Kaken, Izuku said. His voice was smooth, devoid of the jagged edges of fear. Bakugo blinked, clearly thrown off by the lack of Kaken, stammering. He scowled, confused, then huffed. Don't die in there, useless. He stomped off. Izuku watched him go. Subject, Bakugo Katsuki. Quirk, explosion. Flaw, excessive pride leads to tunnel vision. Correction protocol, break the ego. Excuse me. A girl nearly tripped over her own feet next to him. Izuku caught her arm before she hit the pavement. It wasn't a frantic grab. It was a precise, calculated interception. Careful, Izuku said. The girl, brown hair, round face, permanent blush, looked up at him, dazzled. Oh. Thanks. I'm so nervous, I guess my feet aren't listening to me. Subject unknown. Quirk, pads on fingertips suggest tactile activation. Zero gravity or adhesion. It's natural to be nervous, Izuku said, letting go of her arm. But panic is inefficient. Breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4, exhale for 4. The girl blinked, then tried it. In, hold out. Wow. That actually helps. I'm Uraraka Ochako. Midoriya Izuku. Well, Midoriya-kun, let's do our best. She pumped a fist in the air, beaming with a sincerity that was almost blinding. Izuku offered a practiced, thin smile. Yes. Let's. She is fragile, he noted as he walked toward the exam hall. She believes in the myth. It will be painful when she learns the truth. The written exam was a joke. With hyperspecs, Izuku didn't just recall the answers. He accessed the textbooks he had speed-read 3 weeks ago as if they were open in front of him. He finished in half the allotted time and spent the rest of the period analyzing the proctor, present Mike, counting the number of times the hero tapped his foot, nervous tick, 42 times per minute. Then came the practical. Battle Center B was a sprawling urban mock-up. Izuku stood in the crowd of examinees stretching his arms. He wore a simple green tracksuit now. Start! Present Mike screamed from the observation tower. There are no countdowns in real battles. Run! Run! The crowd hesitated. Izuku did not. He activated the kinetic booster. The air around his legs shimmered. He pushed off the ground, not with muscles, but with a blast of telekinetic force. He launched forward like a bullet, leaving a cloud of dust and confused students behind. He rounded the first corner and met a 3-pointer, a massive, tank-treaded robot. Analysis: armor plating thickest on the chassis. Weak point, neck joints. Exposed wiring. Izuku didn't stop running. As he closed the distance, he extended his right hand. Twist. He didn't touch the robot. He simply gripped the air. The robot's head jerked violently to the left with a screech of tearing metal. The internal sensors severed. The machine slumped, deactivated. Izuku vaulted over its smoking carcass and kept running. It was a massacre. Izuku moved through the city like a phantom. He didn't destroy the robots with brute force. That was messy. He dismantled them. A 1-pointer lunged? He crushed its wheel axle. A 2-pointer fired a missile? He caught the missile in midair with telekinesis and redirected it back into the robot's face. Efficiency. Precision. Order. In the observation room, the teachers watched the screens. Who is that kid? Midnight asked, leaning forward. He's not just defeating them, he's dissecting them. Midoriya Izuku, All Might whispered, standing at the back of the room. He clutched the railing. Young Midoriya, you found a way? But how? That power. He has 60 points, Cementos noted. And he hasn't even broken a sweat. On the field, the ground began to rumble. The 0-pointer had arrived. It was colossal, towering over the buildings, casting a shadow that swallowed the street. Students screamed and ran. The objective was to flee. Izuku stood his ground, watching the behemoth rise. Size 40 meters. Mass, approximate 2,500 tons. Threat level, high for civilians. Negligible for me. He heard a cry for help. Under a pile of rubble, Uraraka was trapped. The 0-pointer was looming over her, its massive tread about to crush the debris, and her with it. Izuku sighed. Hero Scenario 101. The damsel in distress. He could leave her. It wouldn't affect his score. But AFO's voice echoed in his memory. You must be the symbol, Izuku. You must be better than them. Izuku walked toward the robot. He didn't run. He walked. He stopped directly in the path of the treads. He looked up at the metal god. He raised both hands. Maximum output, 40%. Stop, Izuku commanded. The air in the street screamed. A shockwave of invisible force erupted from Izuku, slamming upward. It hit the 0-pointer under its chassis. The massive robot didn't just stop, it was lifted. 2,500 tons of steel groaned as it was suspended in the air, held up by the mind of a single boy. The fleeing students stopped. They turned around, jaws dropping. Izuku gritted his teeth. The weight was immense, pressing down on his mind like a physical headache. But his body, reinforced by Garaki, held firm. Crush! He clenched his hands into fists. The zero-pointer imploded. The midsection crumpled inward as if squeezed by a giant invisible hand. Metal shrieked, glass shattered, and the robot folded in on itself. Izuku released the hold. The wreckage crashed to the ground, shaking the entire city block. Dust billowed out, coating everyone in gray powder. Izuku stood amidst the cloud, brushing dust off his shoulder. He looked at Uraraka, who was staring at him with wide, terrified eyes. He pointed a finger at the rubble trapping her leg. The rocks lifted gently and floated aside. Are you injured? Izuku asked calmly. I. Uraraka gaped. You just. Time is up. President Mike yelled. Izuku turned and walked away. Simulation complete. April. The first day. The door to Class 1A was huge. Izuku slid it open and stepped inside. The room was noisy. Tenya Ida was scolding Bakugo for having his feet on the desk. Remove your foot. It is disrespectful to the upperclassmen who made this desk. Shut up, Four Eyes. What junior high did you go to, you extra? Izuku walked to his seat, number 18. He sat down quietly, pulling out a notebook. Correction Protocol, Volume 1. Midoriya. Izuku looked up. Ida was marching toward him, chopping the air with his hand. I am Ida Tenya from Semi-Private Academy. I must apologize. During the exam, I misjudged you. You perceived the true nature of the test, rescue, while I was focused only on points. You are the superior student. Izuku looked at Ida. Subject Ida Tenya. Quirk engine. Strength, speed, diligence. Weakness, rigid adherence to rules. He is a soldier waiting for a commander. It wasn't that deep, Ida-kun, Izuku said softly. I just acted. Deku. The room temperature seemed to drop. Bakugo was standing at his desk, staring at Izuku. His eyes were wide, vibrating with a mix of rage and confusion. How? Bakugo whispered. How the hell did you do that? You're quirkless. You've always been quirkless. The class went silent. Everyone looked at Izuku. Izuku stood up slowly. He met Bakugo's gaze. I was a late bloomer, Kaken, Izuku lied. The story Garaki crafted was smooth on his tongue. The doctor said the trauma of the sludge villain incident. It triggered a dormant factor. My body had to break before it could build the power. Bullshit. Bakugo slammed his hand on his desk, sparks flying. You've been hiding it. You were laughing at me this whole time, weren't you? I wasn't hiding anything, Izuku said, stepping closer. He lowered his voice so only Bakugo could hear. You told me to take a swan dive, remember? Maybe I did. Maybe I died on that roof, and this is what came back. Bakugo paled. He took a step back, hitting his chair. If you're here to make friends, pack up and leave. Shota Aizawa lay in a yellow sleeping bag in the doorway, looking like a caterpillar with a hangover. He stood up, unzipping the bag. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down. Inefficient. Izuku's eyes narrowed. Eraserhead. Underground hero. Quirk, erasure. Combat style, capture weapon. He hates wasted time. Good. Put these on and meet me on the field, Aizawa said, holding up gym uniforms. We're doing a quirk apprehension test. The test was a culling. Aizawa announced that the person in last place would be expelled. The class panicked. Uraraka called it unfair. Natural disasters aren't fair, Aizawa deadpanned. Villain attacks aren't fair. If you want to hang out at a burger joint, go elsewhere. Izuku performed with terrifying consistency. 50-meter dash. He used the telekinetic shove to propel himself. 3.04 seconds. Grip strength. He crushed the machine. Error. Standing long jump. He cleared the sandbox entirely. Then came the ball throw. Bakugo threw 705 meters, screaming die. As he did so, he glared at Izuku as he walked back. Izuku stepped into the circle. He held the ball. If I use 100%, I risk damaging the arm despite the upgrades. Keep it at 20%. Vector calculation, 45-degree angle. He wound up his arm. He activated the kinetic booster. His eyes turned red. The power vanished. The ball plopped onto the grass, rolling a pathetic 40 meters. Izuku blinked. The hum of the booster was gone. He turned around. Aizawa stood there, his hair floating, his eyes glowing red. His scarf was floating around him like a snake. I saw the entrance exam, Aizawa said, his voice dry. You have a powerful quirk. But you rely on it too much. You have zero control over your own body's limits. If you break your arm every time you save someone, you're a liability. Izuku stared at him. He thinks I'm the canon Midoriya. He thinks I have a self-harm quirk. Interesting. He hasn't read Garaki's forged file closely enough. I wasn't going to break my arm, Izuku said calmly. Give me the ball, Aizawa said, deactivating his quirk. Try again. But if you hold back, you're gone. Izuku picked up the ball. He erased the output. But he couldn't erase the hyperspecs because it's a mutation of the brain structure. I can still see the trajectory. Izuku looked at the sky. Fine. You want a show? He concentrated. He didn't just use the push. He wrapped the ball in a telekinetic bubble to reduce air resistance to 0. Smash, he whispered mockingly. He threw. The ball rocketed into the sky, vanishing into the clouds. A sonic boom echoed across the field. Aizawa looked at his device. He showed the screen to the class. 1,200 meters. He threw it further than Bakugo. Kaminari shouted. Izuku walked past Aizawa. Is that efficient enough for you, sensei? Aizawa narrowed his eyes. There was something wrong with this kid. He didn't have the eager-to-please aura of a hero hopeful. He had the cold, dead eyes of a veteran. That evening, in the privacy of his room, Izuku pulled the small, wireless earpiece from a hidden compartment in his backpack. Report, Garaki's voice crackled. Infiltration successful, Izuku said, staring at his UA schedule. Aizawa is suspicious, but he's suspicious of everyone. I've established myself as a top contender. And the target? All for One's voice cut in. All Might is diminished, Izuku said. I saw him in the hallway. He reverts to his skeletal form when no one is looking. His time limit is decreasing. Good. The USJ is scheduled for Wednesday. We will accelerate the plan. I will send you the coordinates for the jammer disablement. You must ensure the sensors are down before Kurogiri warps in. And my classmates? Izuku asked. They are collateral, All for One said. Do not let sentiment cloud your judgment, Deku. Understood. Izuku took the earpiece out. He looked at the class photo they had taken earlier. Uraraka was smiling. Ida was stiff. Bakugo was scowling. He traced a finger over their faces. I'm going to save you, he whispered. By showing you how weak you really are. Wednesday. The unforeseen simulation joint USJ. The bus ride was awkward. Midoriya-chan, Tsuyu Azuri croaked, placing a finger on her chin. Your quirk, it's really strong. But it feels different from All Might's. It's scary. Izuku looked up from his notebook. Scary? Yeah. Like, you're not really there when you use it. Your eyes get all cold. Heroism isn't about being warm, Azuri-san, Izuku said. It's about results. If the villain is stopped, does it matter if I smiled? It matters to the people you save. Uraraka chirped. All Might saves people with a smile so they know everything is okay. Izuku looked at her. And if he smiles while he fails? Is that comforting? The bus went silent. You're kinda intense, Midoriya. Kirishima laughed nervously. They arrived at the USJ. 13, the space hero, greeted them. The dome was massive, filled with different disaster zones. Before we begin, 13 started. I have 1 or 2, or 3, or 4 points to make about quirks and safety. Izuku checked his watch. 10 a.m. Now. He tapped his heel against the ground 3 times. A subtle signal. The hyperspecs interfaced with the jammer device he had planted near the entrance sensors during the confusion of getting off the bus. Sensors offline. The lights in the USJ flickered. The fountain in the central plaza sputtered. A black void appeared in the center of the facility. It swirled and expanded, a tear in reality. Aizawa froze. Stay together. 13. Protect the students. What is that? Kirishima asked. Is this part of the training? No, Aizawa pulled his goggles down. Those are villains. A hand reached out of the mist. Pale, covered in severed hands. Shigaraki Tamura stepped out, scratching his neck. Behind him, an army of thugs poured into the plaza, and beside Shigaraki stood a monster. A hulking beast with exposed brains and a beak-like mouth. The gnome, Izuku watched from the top of the stairs. He felt a vibration in his pocket. A single text from unknown, begin. Sensei. Izuku shouted, pointing. The sensors aren't working. They must have a quirk that jams communications. Kaminari, try the radio. Aizawa barked. He jumped down the stairs, engaging the villains alone. It's no good. Kaminari yelled. The black mist, Kurogyri, materialized before the students. Greetings. We are the League of Villains. We have come to extinguish the symbol of peace. Bakugo and Kirishima lunged at the mist. Bet you didn't count on us. Explosions rocked the entrance. But Kurogyri simply expanded. How rude, the mist said. Begone. Darkness swallowed them. Izuku fell. He landed in water. The shipwreck zone. He didn't panic. He hit the water feet first, using a telekinetic bubble to create an air pocket. He surfaced, scanning the area. A boat floated nearby. Tsuyu and Mineta were already climbing onto it. Midoriya-chan. Tsuyu called out. Over here. Izuku leaped from the water, landing on the deck. We're surrounded. Mineta cried, pointing at the water. Dozens of aquatic villains circled the boat like sharks. We're gonna die. We're gonna die. Mineta wailed. Izuku looked at the villains. Low-level thugs. Quantity over quality. He looked at Mineta. Irritating. Be quiet, Izuku ordered. The command was laced with so much cold authority that Mineta actually clamped his hand over his mouth. What do we do? Tsuyu asked. They're waiting for us. They're bunching up, Izuku observed. They assume we are helpless children. That is their error. He walked to the edge of the boat. He placed his hand on the railing. Ajiri-san, when I give the signal, grab Mineta and jump to the shore. Do not look back. What are you going to do? I'm going to clear the path. Izuku closed his eyes. He extended his senses into the water. He felt the currents. He felt the villains treading water. Hydrokinesis simulation. Apply torque to the water mass. He opened his eyes. They glowed bright green. Whirlpool. He twisted his hand. The water around the boat began to rotate. Slowly at first, then violently. A massive vortex formed, dragging the screaming villains into its center. They crashed into each other, bones breaking, quirks misfiring. The boat groaned, tilting dangerously. Now! Izuku shouted. Tsuyu grabbed Mineta and leaped, her tongue flinging them toward the shore. Izuku followed, using a telekinetic boost to glide through the air. Behind them, the villains were sucked into a crushing singularity of water. They landed on the shore. Mineta was shaking. You almost killed them. I neutralized them, Izuku said, turning toward the central plaza. Now stay here. I have to go help Aizawa-sensei. It's too dangerous. Tsuyu said. Stay, Izuku commanded again. He didn't wait for an answer. He sprinted toward the plaza. The plaza was a slaughterhouse. Aizawa was losing. He was fighting valiantly, erasing quirks and capturing thugs, but the Nomu was too fast, too strong. Izuku hid behind a rock formation, watching. Shigaraki stood by the fountain, laughing. You're cool, Eraserhead. But you're not strong enough. Nomu, break him. The Nomu caught Aizawa's capture weapon. It pulled him in. Aizawa tried to erase its quirk, but nothing happened. Observation. Nomu has multiple quirks. Shock absorption. Super strength. Erasure is ineffective against pure physical power. Crack. The Nomu slammed Aizawa's head into the concrete. Izuku flinched. That wasn't part of the plan. Or was it? AFO had said. Do not let sentiment cloud your judgment. Aizawa was the teacher who had threatened to expel him. He was a hero who worked in the shadows but upheld the light. He was necessary collateral. So weak, Shigaraki sighed. Where is All Might? If he doesn't show up, game over. Shigaraki turned. He looked straight at the shipwreck zone, where Tsuyu and Mineta were peeking out, disobeying orders. Oh? Shigaraki smiled beneath the hand on his face. Maybe if I kill a few kids, he'll come running. He moved. In a blur of speed, Shigaraki was in front of Tsuyu. He reached out his hand. 5 fingers. No, Izuku whispered. This wasn't calculated. This wasn't efficient. This was just cruelty. Izuku moved. He didn't run. He warped. A burst of pure speed pushed by telekinesis. Shigaraki's hand descended toward Tsuyu's face. Slam. A green blur collided with Shigaraki. Izuku tackled the villain leader, skidding across the pavement. Get away from her! Izuku shouted, pinning Shigaraki's wrists to the ground with his mind. Shigaraki stared up at him, red eyes wide with madness. You're the brat. The master's new pet. Izuku froze. He knows. Pet? Tsuyu whispered, horrified. Get off me! Shigaraki's decay quirk activated. The ground beneath Izuku began to crumble to dust. Izuku leaped back just in time. Noma! Shigaraki shrieked. Kill the brat! The Nomu abandoned Aizawa and charged at Izuku. It moved like a freight train. Izuku stood his ground. He couldn't fight this thing. It was built to kill All Might. Think. Hyperspecs analyze weakness. None found. Pure muscle. I am here! The doors to the USJ exploded inward. All Might stood there. He wasn't smiling. He was furious. In a split second, All Might was there. He clotheslined the Nomu, sending it flying. He grabbed Aizawa and the students, moving them to safety in a blur. I am sorry I am late, All Might said, his voice deep and vibrating with rage. Young Midoriya. Get back. This is too dangerous. Izuku stood next to All Might. He looked at Shigaraki. He's strong, All Might, Izuku said, playing the part. That monster, it has shock absorption. Does it now? All Might cracked his knuckles. Then I just have to hit it until it stops absorbing. The battle that followed was Titan against Titan. All Might versus Nomu. Shockwaves shattered the windows of the dome. Izuku watched. He analyzed. All Might is slower than his prime. Each punch is weakening. He is bleeding steam. Shigaraki was scratching his neck furiously. Cheater! Cheater! You're supposed to be weaker. Izuku, Shigaraki hissed, looking at him. Why aren't you helping? Master said you were useful. Izuku met Shigaraki's gaze. He tapped his earpiece subtly. Channel open. Because you are failing, Tamura, Izuku whispered into the mic, knowing only Shigaraki, an AFO listening in, would understand the context. You rely on brute force. You brought an army to kill one man and you're losing. Shut up! Shigaraki screamed. Kurogyri. Wrap him up! Kurogyri tried to intercept All Might, but Bakugo exploded out of nowhere, pinning the mist metal brace to the ground. Gotcha! Bakugo yelled. The tables had turned. The heroes were winning. All Might delivered the final blow, a plus-ultra smash that sent the Nomu crashing through the roof of the USJ and into the stratosphere. All Might stood amidst the dust, steam pouring off him. He pointed a shaking finger at Shigaraki. You are finished. Surrender. Shigaraki trembled. We were so close. Tamura, Kurogyri said, warping beside him. We must retreat. The pros are here. Snipe's bullets began to rain down. Shigaraki looked at Izuku one last time, a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. This isn't over, Deku, Shigaraki spat. Next time, I'll dust you too. The mist swallowed them. They were gone. The aftermath. The police arrived. The students were herded out. Izuku sat on the back of an ambulance, a blanket over his shoulders. Detective Sakachi was taking statements. You were brave, kid, Sakachi said. Holding off the leader like that. I just did what I had to do, Izuku said, staring at the ground. From the distance, he saw All Might talking to the police. The hero deflated into his skeleton form the moment he was out of sight of the students. He coughed blood. Izuku's phone buzzed in his pocket. A secure message. Master, mission partially successful. Combat data on All Might obtained. Shigaraki is displeased, but he is a child. You performed well, Izuku. You have secured the trust of the class. Izuku looked up. Uraraka and Ida were running toward him. Deku-kun! Uraraka cried, tears in her eyes. I was so worried. You jumped right at him. You were reckless. Ida scolded, chopping the air, though his voice wavered. But, you saved Ajiri-kun. You acted as a true hero. Bakugo stood apart from the group, staring at Izuku with a complex expression. Suspicion? Jealousy? Izuku pulled the blanket tighter around himself. He felt the warmth of Uraraka's hand on his shoulder. It felt nice. It felt real. But then he remembered Aizawa's face as it was smashed into the concrete. He remembered the cold satisfaction he felt watching the villains drown in the whirlpool. He looked at his friends. He smiled, a sad, practiced smile. I'm just glad everyone is safe, he lied. Phase 1 complete, the voice in his head whispered. The seeds are sown. Izuku closed his eyes. He was the savior. And saviors had to have blood on their hands. The UA Sports Festival was not a celebration of youth. It was a gladiator pit disguised with fireworks and cheering crowds. It was where the next generation of soldiers was paraded before the masses, measured by their destructive potential, and sold to the highest bidder in the form of internships. Izuku Midoriya stood in the waiting room of Class 1A, listening to the roar of the crowd vibrating through the concrete walls. Heart rate, 58 BPM. Cortisol, negligible. Ambient temperature, 22 degrees Celsius. The hyperspecs quirk fed him a constant stream of useless data, which he swiped away mentally like closing pop-up ads on a browser. He adjusted his gym uniform. It felt loose. His muscles, denser and more compact thanks to the doctor's regimen, felt coiled like high-tension springs. Midoriya. The room went quiet. Shoto Todoroki stood at the entrance to the row of lockers. His dual-colored hair was perfectly split, a physical manifestation of the war raging inside him. His left side was covered by his gym uniform, hidden, rejected. His right side was encased in a thin layer of frost. Izuku turned slowly. Todoroki-kun. Objectively speaking, Todoroki said, his voice flat and cold, you are stronger than me. The class stiffened. Kirishima stopped sharpening his hardening. Bakugo, sitting in the corner, narrowed his eyes, his grip on the bench tightening. You managed to dismantle the robots in the entrance exam without touching them, Todoroki continued. You handled the villains at the USJ with the efficiency of a pro. All Might has his eyes on you, doesn't he? Izuku tilted his head. Observation. Todoroki's pupil dilation indicates high stress. Microtremors in the right hand. He is projecting. I'm not trying to pry into that, Todoroki said, clenching his fist. But I will beat you. I swore I'd be the best without ever using my damn father's quirk. I'll reject him completely by taking first place with only my right side. Izuku stared at him. He didn't feel intimidated. He felt disappointment. Subject, Todoroki Shoto. Quirk, half cold, half hot. Psychological profile, trauma-induced repression. He is fighting a ghost, not me. You're declaring war? Izuku asked softly. I am. Izuku took a step forward. The air in the room seemed to grow heavy. That's inefficient, Izuku said. You're fighting with one arm tied behind your back because you hate your dad. Do you think the villains care about your daddy issues, Todoroki-kun? Todoroki's eyes widened, a flash of genuine anger breaking his stoic mask. What did you say? I said. Izuku stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that cut through the room, that if you think half-assing your potential is a rebellion, you're just a child throwing a tantrum. I'm not here to play games. If you come at me with half your power, I will break you. He walked past Todoroki, his shoulder brushing against the boy's frozen side. Hey! Don't start fighting before we even get out there! Kirishima yelled, trying to break the tension. But the damage was done. The line was drawn. The obstacle race. Start! President Mick's voice boomed over the speakers, amplified to ear-splitting levels. The massive steel doors ground open. The stampede began. Izuku didn't sprint. He didn't shove. He simply activated the kinetic booster. He visualized the air behind him as a solid wall. He pushed off it. Tum! A shockwave of telekinetic force launched him over the heads of the struggling students. He soared through the tunnel, landing gracefully on the open track. Efficiency. While Mineta was getting trampled and Bakugo was blasting his way through the crowd, Izuku was already gliding. He treated the ground like a suggestions, his feet barely touching the dirt, as he pushed himself forward with rhythmic pulses of force. The 0-pointers from the entrance exam appeared, the first obstacle. Targets acquired, Izuku muttered. Students behind him screamed. Todoroki froze a robot in a massive glacier, trapping those behind him. Sorry. I went a little hard. Izuku didn't stop to admire the ice. He flew straight toward a robot blocking his path. It raised a massive metal fist. Izuku extended his hand. Target, knee joint. Structural weakness detected. Torque. He twisted his wrist. The robot's leg joint snapped with the sound of a gunshot. The machine toppled sideways, clearing a path. Izuku flew through the gap before the robot even hit the ground. He didn't destroy for the sake of destruction. He destroyed to advance. The fall. The minefield. It was all trivial. Bakugo and Todoroki were fighting for the lead, exchanging blasts of ice and fireless explosions. They were focused on each other. Izuku was right behind them, drafting in their wake like a predator. As they reached the final stretch of the minefield, Bakugo and Todoroki were neck and neck. Get out of my way, icy hot. Move. Izuku saw the mines. He saw the trigger mechanisms buried 3 inches under the dirt. Opportunity. He reached out with his mind. He didn't trigger one mine. He triggered all of them in a 10-meter radius behind the 2 leaders. Boom. The collective explosion created a massive updraft. Izuku leaped into it, catching the kinetic wave. He grabbed a piece of metal debris from a destroyed robot he'd carried with him, a shield. He rode the shockwave. He flew past Bakugo and Todoroki, soaring high above their heads. Bakugo looked up, his red eyes bulging. DKU? Izuku flipped in the air, landing perfectly on the other side of the smoke, crossing the finish line. And the winner is Midoriya Izuku. Present Mike screamed. A dark horse victory. Izuku stood at the finish line, dusting off his shoulders. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He looked up at the VIP box where All Might sat. Are you watching, symbol of peace? I don't need to smile to win. Intermission, the master's voice. The cavalry battle had been a chaotic mess of quirks, but Izuku had secured his team's victory through sheer strategic dominance. He had used Uraraka to float them, had some maze gadgets, which he had analyzed and optimized in seconds, to maneuver, and Tokoyami's dark shadow for defense. They hadn't engaged in unnecessary fights. They had simply kept the 10 million points out of reach. Now, it was lunch break. Izuku found a secluded stairwell away from the cafeteria. He tapped his earpiece. Report, Garaki's voice crackled. First place secured, Izuku said, taking a bite of a nutrient bar Garaki had synthesized for him. The crowd is confused. They don't know whether to cheer or be scared. My efficiency unnerves them. Good, All for One's voice interjected. Fear is a form of respect, Izuku. They are used to flashy, boisterous heroes who beg for attention. You are showing them the quiet competence of a ruler. I have the match listings, Izuku said. I'm fighting Shinso Hitoshi first. Then, eventually, Todoroki. Shinso, All for One mused. The boy with the brainwashing quirk? Be careful, Izuku. Your mind is crowded. A mental quirk could destabilize the hyperspecs interface. I'll handle him. He relies on verbal response. I just won't speak. And Todoroki? He's unstable, Izuku reported. He's angry at his father. He's rejecting his fire. It makes him predictable. That is your task, Izuku, All for One commanded. Do not just defeat him. Unmake him. Endeavor is the second pillar of this wretched society. He represents the desperate, ugly climb for power. If you can turn his masterpiece against him, you strike a blow against the very concept of hereditary heroism. How? Convince the boy that his fire is not his father's, All for One purred. Convince him that burning down the system is the only way to be free. Radicalize him, Izuku. Understood. Izuku ended the call. He turned to leave the stairwell, but stopped. A shadow fell over him. A massive, flaming figure blocked the exit. Endeavor. The flame hero was huge, his beard wreathed in fire, his turquoise eyes burning with an intensity that rivaled the sun. He looked down at Izuku with disdain. You, Endeavor rumbled. Midoriya. Izuku looked up. Heart rate, steady. Threat level, extreme. Fire output potential, 2000 degrees Celsius. Endeavor-san, Izuku said politely. I watched your match, Endeavor said, crossing his arms. That power of yours, creating shockwaves with pure pressure. It rivals All Might's strength. You are the obstacle my Shoto must overcome. Is that so? Shoto has a duty, Endeavor growled. He was created to surpass All Might. To do that, he must crush you. Do not hold back against him. I want him to realize that his ice alone is insufficient. Izuku stared at the number 2 hero. He saw the ambition etched into the man's face. He saw the complete lack of fatherly affection. To Endeavor, Shoto wasn't a son, he was a product, a biological weapon forged in a eugenics experiment. A cold, dark rage bubbled in Izuku's chest. This man was everything AFO said was wrong with the world. He was a hero who bought power with abuse. You talk about him like he's a racehorse, Izuku said quietly. Endeavor's eyes narrowed. What? Created to surpass. Duty. Izuku stepped closer, ignoring the heat radiating from the hero. He hates you, you know. He hates you so much he'd rather lose than use the gift you gave him. That is a rebellious phase. He will learn. Will he? Izuku tilted his head. Or will he realize that the only way to truly hurt you isn't to ignore your power, but to use it to destroy everything you built? Endeavor scoffed. You talk too much, boy. Just do your job. Be the stepping stone for his ascent. Endeavor turned to walk away. Endeavor, Izuku called out. The hero stopped. Be careful what you wish for, Izuku whispered, his eyes glowing faintly green. You might get to see his fire today. But it won't be the fire of a hero. Endeavor huffed and walked away. Izuku watched him go. Target acquired. Correction protocol, initiate. The tournament. The battles were brutal. Izuku defeated Shinso quickly. The purple-haired boy had taunted him, trying to get a response. Izuku had simply walked forward, silenced his own mind using the discipline Garaki taught him, and used the telekinetic push to throw Shinso out of bounds. No drama. No speech about how your quirk is heroic, just a swift removal. Uraraka fought Bakugo. It was painful to watch. She tried her best, using a meteor shower strategy, but Bakugo blasted through it. Izuku watched from the stands, analyzing. She is brave. But bravery without power is suicide. Bakugo won, but he looked shaken. He had acknowledged Uraraka as a threat, and then, it was time. The match you've all been waiting for. Present Mike screamed. From the hero course, the boy who dominated the prelims with terrifying efficiency. Midoriya Izuku. Versus. The prodigy recommended student, Todoroki Shoto. The crowd roared. Fireworks exploded. Izuku walked onto the concrete stage. The sun was high. Across the arena, Todoroki stood, looking miserable and determined. Cementos sat ready to intervene. Midnight raised her whip. Ready? Start. Todoroki didn't hesitate. He stomped his right foot. A massive glacier of ice erupted from the ground, surging toward Izuku faster than the eye could follow. It was a wave of instant frost, designed to end the fight in 1 second. Izuku sighed. Predictable. He raised his right hand. He didn't punch. He swiped his hand horizontally. Sever. A blade of invisible kinetic force sliced through the air. It hit the glacier. Crack. The mountain of ice shattered. It didn't just break. It pulverized into snow. The force of Izuku's swipe created a wind tunnel that blew the freezing powder back toward Todoroki. The crowd gasped. Todoroki shielded his face from the wind. What? Is that it? Izuku asked, his voice amplified by the silence of the arena. He stood amidst the falling snow, hands in his pockets. Is that the rebellion? A little bit of ice? Todoroki gritted his teeth. He launched another wave. Izuku stepped forward. He flicked a finger. The ice wave split down the middle, passing harmlessly on either side of him. You're trembling, Izuku noted aloud. The hyperspecks zoomed in on Todoroki's skin. Patches of frostbite were forming on his right arm. Your body can't handle the cold without the heat to regulate it. You're killing yourself to spite your father. Shut up. Todoroki ran forward, trying to close the distance to freeze Izuku directly. Izuku didn't move until Todoroki was within range. Then, he sidestepped. He grabbed Todoroki's right arm, the frozen one. "It hurts, doesn't it?" Izuku whispered. He used a precise pulse of telekinesis to slam Todoroki into the ground. Todoroki gasped, rolling away and creating a wall of ice to separate them. He stood up, panting. His breath came in white clouds. "Why?" Todoroki wheezed. "Why aren't you attacking? You could have thrown me out." "Because I want to see it," Izuku said. "I want to see the weapon. I will never use his fire," Todoroki shouted. "In battle. I will never be him." "Who said anything about being him?" Izuku walked toward the ice wall. He placed his hand on it. The ice cracked and crumbled under his touch. "Look at him, Shoto," Izuku said, pointing up at the stands where Endeavor was watching with crossed arms. "Look at your father. He wants you to be the #1 hero. He wants you to be his legacy." "I know that, so you think freezing yourself is the answer?" Izuku's voice grew harder. "You think being a half-broken hero is a victory?" "No. That's just being a victim. What do you know about it?" Todoroki screamed, tears freezing on his cheeks. "You don't know what he did. He drove my mother insane. He treated us like things." "I know," Izuku said. "I know because this society is built on men like him. Men who think power justifies everything. All Might watches while people like you suffer. Endeavor creates monsters to satisfy his ego." Izuku stopped 10 feet from Todoroki. "You want to hurt him?" Izuku asked. "You want to really, truly make him despair?" Todoroki stared at him, shaking. "Don't ignore the fire," Izuku said. "Take it. It's not his. It's the gun he put in your hand. Turn the gun around." "What?" "Burn his legacy down," Izuku hissed. "Show him that the power he bred into you isn't for heroism. It's for destruction. Use the fire to burn the system that created you. Use it to win, not for him, but to show everyone that you are the monster he made." Todoroki looked at his left hand. He thought of his mother. "You are not a prisoner of your blood, Shoto." But Izuku's words twisted the memory. "You are not a prisoner. You are the executioner. It's yours!" Izuku shouted, mimicking the words of a hero but with the intent of a villain. "Unleash it!" Something snapped in Todoroki. The dam broke. The memory of his mother's face mixed with the hatred for his father, fueled by Izuku's dark logic. "It's mine! Aha-ha-wahaha!" Fire erupted. It wasn't the controlled, orange flame of a hero. It was the chaotic, roaring inferno. The left side of Todoroki's uniform burned away instantly. A pillar of flame shot into the sky, melting the ice in seconds. The air in the stadium shimmered with intense heat. Endeavor stood up in the stands, his eyes wide. "Shoto." "Yes. You've finally accepted it." On the field, Todoroki was smiling, a twisted, manic smile amidst the tears. "You're crazy, Midoriya. You're trying to help your enemy?" "Help?" Izuku smiled back. It was a cold, terrifying expression. "No. I'm just correcting a flaw." Todoroki unleashed a massive blast of fire. At the same time, he activated his ice. The rapid heating and cooling of the air created a massive explosion of pressure. Samantha stood up. "Midnight! That's too dangerous. I can't stop it!" Midnight cried. Izuku stood in the path of the inferno. Heat levels critical. Kinetic energy massive. He didn't dodge. Dr. Garaki's files. Quirk subroutine 4. Energy redistribution. Izuku opened his arms. "Come!" The fire engulfed him. The crowd screamed. But inside the flames, Izuku wasn't burning. The kinetic booster wasn't just a push/pull quirk. It was an energy manipulation field. He couldn't absorb the heat like a sponge, but he could wrap the kinetic energy of the blast around himself, spinning it, condensing it. He felt the skin on his arms blistering slightly. His limit was approaching, but the regeneration serum hummed in his blood, knitting the cells back together as fast as they burned. He gathered the energy of Todoroki's fire, and his own telekinetic force into a single point in his right hand. "This is the world you wanted, Endeavor!" Izuku shouted over the roar of the flames. He lunged forward. Todoroki threw everything he had. Izuku punched through the fire. He didn't hit Todoroki with a fist. He hit him with a condensed ball of pure force and redirected thermal energy. Impact. The stadium went white. A shockwave blasted outward, shattering the concrete walls of the ring. Cementus's barriers were vaporized. The wind knocked spectators out of their seats. Dust and steam covered everything. Silence returned slowly, broken only by the coughing of the crowd. Midnight waved her fan, clearing the smoke. Todoroki is. The boy lay out of bounds, embedded in the concrete wall. He was unconscious, his left side still smoking, his face peaceful but tear-stained. In the center of the ring, standing amidst a crater of molten glass, was Izuku. His gym uniform was burned off his upper body. His right arm was purple and bruised, steam rising from his skin. His green eyes glowed in the dust. He looked up at Endeavor. Endeavor looked down, his face pale. He wasn't cheering anymore. He looked afraid. The fire Shoto had released hadn't been heroic. It had been hateful. And the boy who had drawn it out. Midoriya Izuku advances to the final. Midnight announced, her voice shaking slightly. Izuku didn't celebrate. He walked toward the exit tunnel. As he walked, he looked at his hand. He felt the residual heat. It worked, he thought. The seed is planted. Shoto knows the taste of destruction now. In the VIP box, All Might gripped the railing until it bent. That wasn't a hero's fight, All Might whispered to himself. That was something else. He felt a chill run down his spine, a sensation he hadn't felt since his last battle with All for One. Young Midoriya, what have you become? The final match, Izuku vs. Bakugo. The final was anticlimactic compared to the semi-final. Bakugo was furious. He was frothing at the mouth. Don't you dare look down on me, Deku! Use that fire move! Use everything! Izuku stood opposite him. His arm was bandaged, healed enough to use but not to strain. I don't need fire for you, Kaken, Izuku said dismissively. The fight was brutal. Bakugo was fast, his explosions creating a smokescreen. He moved with the instinct of a born fighter, but Izuku had the hyperspecs. He saw Bakugo's twitch muscles firing before the explosion happened. He saw the sweat accumulation on Bakugo's palms. When Bakugo went for his signature howitzer impact, spinning in the air to build momentum, Izuku didn't try to overpower it. He waited. Just as Bakugo released the blast, Izuku focused his telekinesis on a single point, Bakugo's equilibrium in his inner ear. Push. A tiny, precise nudge. Bakugo's aim wavered. The explosion went wide, blasting the ground to the left of Izuku. Izuku stepped through the smoke. He placed his hand on Bakugo's chest. You're too loud, Izuku whispered. Repulsion. A massive blast of force launched Bakugo out of the ring. He flew across the grass and hit the boundary wall. Bakugo is out of bounds. Midoriya Izuku is the winner of the UA Sports Festival. Confetti rained down. The crowd cheered, but it was a confused cheer. They had expected a slugfest. They got a dismantling. Bakugo lay on the ground, staring up at the sky. He hadn't been beaten by power. He had been beaten because he couldn't touch Deku. Damn it! Bakugo sobbed, tears of frustration leaking from his eyes. Damn it all! The ceremony, the podium rose. Izuku stood on the first place pedestal. Bakugo, restrained and muzzled, as in canon, his rage uncontrollable, stood on second. Todoroki, awake but staring blankly at nothing, stood on third. All Might descended from the sky. I am here, he landed with a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. He handed medals to Todoroki and Bakugo, offering words of encouragement that seemed to bounce off them. Then he reached Izuku. Young Midoriya, All Might said, placing the gold medal around Izuku's neck. Congratulations. You showed incredible power. Thank you, All Might, Izuku said. But tell me, All Might leaned in close, his voice dropping. During your match with young Todoroki, what did you say to him? You seemed angry. Izuku looked into All Might's sunken blue eyes. I told him the truth, Izuku said innocently. I told him that his power belongs to him. That's what a hero would say, right? All Might recoiled slightly. The words were right, but the tone, it was wrong. Right, All Might said, straightening up. Keep working hard. The world is watching. I know, Izuku smiled. As All Might turned to wave to the crowd, Izuku's smile dropped. He looked at the metal. It was gold. It was heavy. It was a passkey. With this metal, he was now the top prospect in Japan. Every agency would want him. Every villain would fear him. He touched his earpiece. Mission complete, he whispered. Excellent, All for One replied. Todoroki is shaken. Endeavor is terrified. And the world thinks you are their next savior. The stage is set for the next act. Izuku looked at the crowd cheering his name. Midoriya! Midoriya! He raised his fist. Cheer, he thought. Cheer for the end of your era.